Welcome to a conversation on active nonviolence. I'm Byron Plumley. I'm a co-member of the Loretto community, and so this afternoon is sponsored by the Denver Activities Committee of Loretto and the Loretto Peace Committee. So, we gather as a community of like-minded people standing on common ground. We're committed to working for justice and acting for peace because the gospel urges us. Really, we are the choir. And we know most of the songs, but it's good for the choir to rehearse, and it's once in a while we learn a new song. So this afternoon we may hear something that we didn't think of before. We're joined today also by a cloud of witnesses. All those who have gone before us, whose shoulders we stand on, those who have inspired us, those who call us to love the earth and to love the human family. And many in our cloud of witnesses bring a feminist perspective, and that is seeing the interdependence of all life as the web of life, and respecting all voices in the circle. This foundational piece of interdependence is essential for nonviolent social change. And so we remember the image of the web, and we practice connections that allow us to build relationships. We see a world of trouble and beauty. And there's no need for us to go through the checklist of trouble. We all have that well in our minds. We see injustice and violence, and yet we also know kindness and generosity. And today we ask, how do we feel the anger and the frustration at injustice, while maintaining our inner balance that allows us to hold on to the values of love and compassion? Can our anger be motivational? Can it help us to achieve the good that we want? Can we be guided by love so we don't become what we oppose? That we don't resort to name-calling or dehumanizing people who see things differently than we do. And I have to admit, privately, I might use derogatory language towards some certain people, but today we're trying to lift ourselves to a place of honoring our own values of love, so that we behave in the most positive, nonviolent way. In conflict, there is often the choice between fight or flight. But we know a third way. We know that the work of nonviolence will transform injustice and overcome the violence. Martin Luther King used to use that concept that the power of love can overcome the injustice and the violence that we experience. One of our goals today might be to help each other see the possibilities for active nonviolence in our lives. And remember, if we claim nonviolence as a value, that a value is something we act on, not just a good wish. Nonviolence will be something that we demonstrate by our action. So hold on to that idea that values are something we act on. I'd like to take a moment and just review the agenda for today. After this little introduction, George will lead us in a song, the prayer of St. Francis. Then we're going to watch a 30-minute film clip on India and the Salt March, because Gandhi is so foundational to nonviolence in social movements. We'll have some table discussion, and there's some questions on the tables. It's on the white page. We'll take a little break for refreshments, and we'll have George lead us in a song again, and we'll gather for a large group sharing. And there will be a few closing comments and a final song. So that's kind of the agenda for this afternoon. The handouts that are on the table, the white page obviously is the schedule for this afternoon. The blue page is 2 pages of quotations on active nonviolence for your future reflection. The green page are a couple of poems, one by Jan Richards and one by Daniel Berrigan. And the yellow page on one side has an activist survey that you can reflect on sometime. And the other side is nonviolence as a way of life, planting seeds. And I'd like you to look at that yellow page now. I'd like to say a few words about the components that are there. Nonviolence as a way of life was a philosophy that Gandhi taught and lived. And so many of us try to practice that, not only in our speech, but in our action, in the way we care for the earth. And so what I've done is highlighted just a few things here that we can reflect on. So we begin by looking within and recognizing the potential for violence in our own life. We respect the earth and live simply. And that piece has to do with how we care for the common good. And was it Elizabeth Ann Seton maybe who said, live simply so that others may simply live? A common refrain that we can hold on to in terms of our care for the earth. Declare that violence is not an option. So once we take that off the table, then we're forced to consider other ways of resolving difficulties and conflicts. It's like not choosing to carry a gun. If I don't carry a gun, okay, that's not an option. I won't use it. So, risk being vulnerable. Again, in the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King talked about the power of redemptive suffering and the risk we take when we put ourselves forward and are willing to accept some suffering. Seek truth, practice dialogue. And I find that really hard in dealing with people who see things totally different than I do. But the power of dialogue is critical to nonviolent social change. And it is difficult when you're addressing somebody who has alternative facts. Might be a bit of a challenge. But we do our best to seek the truth. Take a stand. Everything counts. And I think that's really important for us to realize that when we act for justice, for peace, everything counts. So if we're caring for children, if we're caring for elderly parents, whatever action we can take, it's important. And remember, it's all linked to that web of life. So it's foundational in our movement for nonviolence. Notice what makes you laugh. Laughter is absolutely essential. And we all know that. And hopefully we all enjoy that. We just try to do it without being abusive in any way. Now, I have to admit I really enjoy political cartoons. I think some of those illustrators have great wisdom and insight in how they look at some of our social situations. And so there's humor there that gets at some of the reality. And last, imagine a peaceful world and celebrate life. And you may remember in Alice in Wonderland, I think it was the Queen talking to Alice and saying, "Why, often I imagine 6 impossible things before breakfast." And that's part of the challenge for us. Can we imagine the impossible? Imagine good and make that possible. So our imagination is really important. Okay, I'd like to invite George to come up and lead us in a song. And again, that song was printed on the white page.
Make me a channel of your peace. Where is Satan, let me bring your love. Where is injury, your pardon love. And where there's doubt, true faith in you. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there's despair in life, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, only light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. Oh, Master, grant that I may never see so much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love with all my soul. Make me a channel of your peace. It is important that we are one. In giving of ourselves that we receive, and in dying that we're born to eternal life.
In looking at this little film clip about Gandhi, we see a bit of history. But today our purpose is to ask, what reminds you of our current situation? Is there any part of this that you say, well, I feel this, or I get a sense that this is going on today in some way? Is there a lesson for today? Or has violence become a new norm in our society? And what actions address injustice in our time? What is needed? The conversation obviously can go in any direction you want, but see what ideas you might share with each other. We have about 30 minutes or so for our conversation. When you start, I want to say just one more quick thing about Gandhi's philosophy, and you maybe heard this in the film. One of the key things for Gandhi was non-cooperation with injustice, non-cooperation with violence. So where does that put us in terms of saying we will not cooperate?
I'd like you to join me in a prayerful song that seems very appropriate for what we're talking about today. It's Lord, send out your Spirit. I'll sing it for you, and then you can sing it back to me. And we'll do a little back and forth. Okay? Right. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. O Lord, my God, you are great indeed. How manifest are your works, O Lord. The earth is full of your creatures. Everybody. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. If you take away the breath, O Lord, they die and return to their dust. When you send forth your Spirit, they live. You renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. May the glory of the Lord endure forever, and may the Lord be glad in his word. Pleasing to him be my theme, for I rejoice in the Lord. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth.
As we continue our conversation and our reflections, I'd like to share with you this poem. It's on the whatever color sheet, the green sheet, the one on the blessing in a time of violence. And I do this in part to just put it on the recording. Blessing in a time of violence. Which is to say, this blessing is always. Which is to say, there is no place this blessing does not long to cry out and lament, to weep its words in sorrow, to scream its lines in sacred rage. Which is to say, there is no day this blessing ceases to whisper into the ear of the dying, the despairing, the terrified. Which is to say, there is no moment this blessing refuses to sing itself into the heart of the hated and the hateful, the victim and the victimizer, with every last ounce of hope it has. Which is to say, there is none that can stop it, none that can halt its course, none that will still its cadence, none that will delay its rising, none that can keep it from springing forth from the mouths of us who hope, from the hands of us who act, from the hearts of us who love, from the feet of us who will not cease our stubborn, aching, marching, marching, until this blessing has spoken its final word, until this blessing has breathed its benediction in every place, in every tongue. Peace, peace, peace. I'd like to invite you to share a conversation again in a large group. And it's a little awkward, but I'm going to ask you to come up and use the microphone. That way, everybody will be able to hear any thoughts or comments that you might have, things that came from your table conversation, ideas that have not been expressed that you'd like to put out to all of us. So please, any of you who would be interested and willing to share some of your ideas, please.
One of the most interesting comments that came up in our small table discussion with regard to the question, has violence become a new norm in our society, is that the country was founded on violence, and that we learned empire very early, and that we're taking violence around the world, and even that the caravans of people fleeing violence, asking our country for shelter, or fleeing violence in countries that our country has interfered with in a violent way, making matters worse. So it's a little bit disingenuous for us to trouble about whether violence has become a new norm in our society, because on our behalf we've been spreading violence since before the country was founded, with the European colonization, with slavery, with and then running forward through history to, I think it was the 80s when we were interfering so much in South and Central.
Two comments at our table that have been ringing in my ears are Marty's comment. Perhaps we should continue this dialogue and not just have it be today, but continue it and figure ways to continue it. And Martha's comment of that need, the great need for community and for support of one another in figuring our steps.
We spent quite a bit of time at our table talking about the last question, what actions address injustice in our time? Because we're looking for glimmers of hope, in ways in which there is a response. And the two examples that we talked about were the kids from Parkland. We're celebrating the first anniversary of that shooting in Florida, and the way that they have mobilized themselves and other young people all over the country around issues around gun control. And the second one is the Women's March, which was a direct response to the inauguration and the continuing efforts around that, I think resulted in some of the elections in November that brought 100 women to the Capitol. So those are, little, we've got to find those little glimmers where there's some hope and some promise in the midst. But I agree completely about particularly needing community in order to be able to do that. I think that's a factor in both of those situations that has really kept the movements alive.
I think also we need to keep our balance. As much as we are confronted with violence, TV, a lot to get angry at the TV. I was at a restaurant with some friends of mine, and we were talking about things like this, and one of the guys said, "Hey, look over at that table over there. You see that mother looking after that child? He says, that's really beautiful." He says, and that's love at work right there. And I feel like, yeah, I need to pay attention to that too. We need to pay attention to all the little acts of love and healing that goes on all around us. And it helps us keep our balance and not get too upset intuitively.
My name is Julie. I'm sitting at a table with these wonderful Vincentian volunteers. A couple of things that came up at our table were that in the present time we are watching one person or one group of people define who their enemy is. And another observation was that the people just on the other side of the US-Mexico border are the residents there and all of the people from the first wave of people wanting to seek asylum in our country. That with this large gathering of people just on the other side of the border, that it's very hard right now to sense unity in that group. There's a lot of expression of individualism and individuals who feel a certain way, and one person might say, "Why are you here right now?" And another person might say, I came, I thought I would be able to cross a border, and I'm escaping violence. I had talked a few minutes with Byron before we started, and I was so glad when Pat called me, and I said, "Yes, put me down for coming." And I thought about this because I think to keep faith right now and to personally keep hope alive is a form of being non-violent with myself, with ourselves. And I think it was Hosanna, maybe each of these people at my table were talking about how we educate ourselves right now, how we fill ourselves with wisdom about anything on the continuum of terrible violence happening on our planet to nonviolent choices. And these wonderful young people are going to get to go to the border this weekend and show witness. I encourage them to take all of our love, that's mine, all of our love and our steps and our shoes and our marching with them. That it comes down almost daily to choices. So that's a few things that came up for us.
On the one side of that yellow page, there's a self-reflection survey about activism. And at our table, one of the things we acknowledged was our age and our energy level, and asking ourselves, what can we really do at this point? And as I mentioned earlier, everything counts. And one of the beautiful things that the Loretto community is engaged in is political action through letters and phone calls. And every week there is a mission announcement that comes out through email. And every week we are encouraged and challenged to make those phone calls. And so we engage in the political process to the ability that we have and to the amount of energy that we have in order to say we care. We care about positive social change in our society and in the world. And so, for each of us, thinking, what can I do? Well, we do what we can. We do what's right in front of us to do. So I think we should be encouraged by that because we are involved. We are engaged. Someone else, whoever else wants to share, please step up, don't be shy.
I'm from St. Louis, and back in about 1980 or so, two of the women from our Catholic worker community were leading a Witness for Peace delegation in Nicaragua and were captured and held hostage by the Contras. And so a couple hundred of us gathered. It was summer and really hot, and we were standing on the corner by St. Louis University by their what we call their college church, St. Francis Xavier Church. And we stood there in silence for, I don't know, a couple of hours, I suppose. And I was reminded of it by Jan Richardson's mention of our feet. And, but it was at that moment that I came to understand what it means to stand with Mary at the foot of the cross. And that much of our action is just standing and standing with.
My name is Anna Klug, and I feel moved to tell a little story about our speaker, Byron Plumley. Now, you know Byron. But I was standing, and thank you, Marianne, for the comments about standing. I was standing in front of the Capitol a couple of weeks ago with a sign that said, "War is not the answer." And this young man walked by me, turned around and said, "Thank you." And I said, "Well, thank you." And he kept walking. And then he turned around again and he said, "Do you know Byron Plumley?" I said, "Yes."
I'm kicking myself that I didn't bring these postcards that we all got the other night, maybe about 2 weeks ago when we went to the community meeting on the future of the Loretto Heights campus. And there are a number of people who are really concerned about the canopy of trees and others about the art center and certainly about the cemetery of nuns, but these professional community development people passed out these postcards that you were to write to yourself from the year 2040. And it's a great way to imagine what it looks like then in your mind. And, at first I was just had a blank because I was so sort of anchored in, well, this should happen and this should happen. But since then, I really enjoyed that thought of writing very bolstering, so it might be an idea, but I didn't bring it up.
Well, I was just wondering, watching that film and seeing how those many thousands of people put themselves into that kind of danger. It's sort of overwhelming, and I guess I've been kind of ruminating about this. I'm a slow learner, so it takes me a while to let it come to the fore for me. And then I thought, well, they say the gurus, the mystics, people who are really connected spiritually with the divine, keep telling us that, we're not going to get by with just living our lives as we are. We have to get in there and suffer, I guess. I mean, what do those people, look at the people at the border. I mean, they're sacrificing their lives to come to a country which is so violent. And it's amazing to me, and I'm just wondering, do I have the stamina do we have the stamina to be able to be in a situation where we will be hurt or we will be murdered? I mean, I think of the Maryknoll sisters who were just slaughtered, the Jesuits who were murdered. People all over this earth are being tortured, and yet I and my community, for the most part, is living pretty well. What is it that we need to do? Does anyone have any answer? How can we jump over this hurdle and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, I guess?
I've been pondering that same thing. And I have just one additional question to add to it, is how do we allow others to put themselves in the face of danger, others whom we love? And are we willing to do that? Our table noted that there is an action right now in Denver that meets the requirements for everything we've talked about, and that's the pending teacher strike. It's a matter of helping people understand that it is an injustice, that it's something that has to be rectified in order for their children to have quality education. And the parents believe that, and the parents are actually encouraging the teachers to get this handled today if possible, but if not, to go on strike, and they will have the support of the parents of the kids who have to get out of school in order for this to happen. So it's happening right now.
Speaking of things that are happening right now, tomorrow is a very important day in El Paso. We know that the president will be there. We know that marches are organized. And I believe Loretto is streaming a conversation tomorrow from El Paso. So let's give that a lot of attention. Let's give it a lot of prayer or whatever good energy we can contribute. It's a critical point in the border and in the issue of immigration. So we'll just be paying attention and offering our love and good energy. Anyone else that would like to make a comment?
It just says live stream, www.facebook.com, Annunciation House / That's what it says on here.
Monday, February 11th at 10 a.m. It's a press conference, actually, with Ruben Garcia, who heads up Annunciation House, to counter, as I understand it, to counter and to tell what's actually happening with migrants, au contraire to what the White House describes migrants as. The address of the live stream address,
Just say it.
www.facebook.com/annunciation with a capital A, house with a capital H, house / just in case, 10 o'clock tomorrow.
Friends, I think we've come close to the end of our time, and I'd like to close, first of all, by thanking all of you for being here, and what a lively conversation we've had, especially in the small groups, and hopefully take away at least one little thought that might serve you well in your own commitment to active nonviolence. I'd especially like to thank the Denver Activities Committee of Loretto here, and Pat McCormick, who has been my lead organizer, and all of you who served on that committee to create this little event. I'd also like to thank the Loretto Peace Committee, which is a national group. I mean, we're stretched from coast to coast. And I'm grateful that Marianne McGivern is here with us as a stalwart member of that community, that committee. I'd like to thank Marty Lally and Holy Family for hosting us. And especially Jerry Faze, who did all the work of opening and helping us set up and the sound system and all of that. She's just tremendous, so give her a raise. I'd like to especially thank Donna Hamburg, who has done all of the refreshments here, with a little help from friends, but thank you, Donna. Now I'll invite George to lead us in one more song.
I'll sing it to you, and you get to sing it back. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord. Bless the Lord, all you works of the Lord. Praise and glorify God forever. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord. Mountains and hills, bless the Lord. Bless the Lord, you rivers and streams. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord. Let this assembly bless the Lord. Let all people praise God's name. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord. Praise to the Father, praise to the Son, to the Holy Spirit, three in one. Glory to God, glory, oh praise God, hallelujah. Glory to God, glory, oh praise the name of the Lord.